Hello everyone, Santa here with an update on Astral Collision with my Let's Make a Game series. And I've got more lore to talk about today mostly, although I've done a few other things as well. The big stuff has been kind of focused on getting stuff fleshed out over here. So I've added, I don't think I've really done much to general lore. I've added a little bit to location blurbs. You'll note that I have filled out a little bit about Lionelholm, which was once called Taurus. The city was the birthplace of Sir Lionel. Now has a temple dedicated to his memories, as well as the training academy where prospective adventurers can get trained. Incidentally, royal guards also get trained at this facility. After all, being a royal guard is often a precursor to becoming an adventurer. And Telendil, the Fallen City, I'll slowly be filling out more and more stuff here as I go. But Telendil, the Fallen City, originally built to defend the Telendil mines, which were rich in iron. It stood for centuries, but once the mines ran dry, the city fell into decline as it was hard-pressed on all sides. The king refused to send the royal knights to defend it, despite the cries of the people of Telendil. It eventually fell to the monsters. A young Sir Lionel witnessed this, and it was a major factor in his decision to found the Adventurers Guild years later. And I've also added the Book of Prophecies, where I'm going to write down the stuff that these people actually prophesied, because I feel like that's kind of important. And then monument texts. So these are going to be the texts on the various monuments. So we have the single one in the Forgotten Tomb, which reads, "Those forgotten from days of old, who mourned the splintering of their kin, shall be remembered in days foretold, when the world reforms to face its sin." So you'll see that when you interact with the thing. Then we have otherwise this is the general refrain in Kendra. "In the land of Kendra, where monsters roam, and heroes serve those who fear to leave home." Kendara has this, I think I added this previously. "The tomb of Kendra and Onara his bride, who were doomed to death by his foolish pride. In the land of Kendra, where monsters roam, and heroes serve those who fear to leave home." Lionelholm has, "The son of Kendra, a valiant knight, sought to save the people from their plight. In the land of Kendra," etc. And Sandy March's unique bit is, "Behold the port of Kendran sorrow, where heroes leave for no tomorrow." This will be a bit of a mystery when they first encounter it. So I've been working on fleshing out the lore, figuring out what documents I need to keep track of it. There's been a lot of figuring out and thinking through stuff in a process that I'm still kind of getting familiar with and learning how to do. I have also continued work on the timeline. So we have added some stuff. I've modified some stuff with the death of Onara and Kendra to where they sacrifice themselves to defend their village rather than having other sorts of deaths. Bohemus succeeded Kendra as king, as their son. And 3 years after, approximately after his kingship begins, he establishes the Royal Knights. And so he created the Royal Knights to guard and defend the peoples of Kendra. And a driving motivation was the need to have people able to focus on things other than survival, such as creating new equipment and the production of food. There's some bugs in this program that make some of the spacing get a little wonky when you add stuff. But then 4 years after that, they actually make the walls of Kendara. And it gets named. Before it was just the unnamed village. There's only one village. You don't have to have a name when it's just the village. But he named it Bohemus, or the people or whatever named it Kendara in honor of Kendra and Onara. You can see Kendara. Yes, that's back designed, but So with the Royal Knights established, a group of mages began turning their attentions to defensive works. They formulated a plan for using earth magic to create the first walls of Kendara, which have seen a great deal of reinforcement since. This further encouraged growth as fewer people died to monsters and farms were more secure. So that's talking about stuff going on in here, where originally some of these areas were originally farmland within the walls. The death of King Bohemus. Bohemus's reign was focused largely on building stability, including the production of food and formalizing the Royal Knights, a force dedicated to the defense of the peoples of Kendra. He was succeeded by his daughter Classis as queen. In 1062, the founding of Taurus. The second settlement founded on the coast to the south. The location was chosen because it was relatively open, giving a good view of any approaching monsters. It was founded once the population living in Kendara had grown sufficiently large. So you can see, in 30 years, basically, 35 years, they managed to actually grow their population enough that they felt it was time to to found here, down here, which again became Lionelholm. The founding of Telendil. This was many years later, 386 as opposed to 162. Founded in the southern woods and located east of Taurus, originally a mining town, as rich iron veins were located in the ground, its defenses were strongly built up as monsters came from all sides and were highly aggressive in their attacks against it. This is a very dangerous area. This is Telendil. And then 932, again, one of the things that I'm having to do is like the way my brain works is it wants to figure out everything chronologically. But what actually makes sense to do is like figure out, okay, what are the events that need to happen and then place them and fill in the details and fill in the details. It's a lot like art. You don't start art by drawing in one corner and filling that in and then doing the next. You rough out all the shapes, then you block in the colors, and then you start adding highlights and shadows and other details. And the exact order in which you do things might vary a little bit, but it's that basic idea of like you add stuff and you add detail and you add detail, but you get your bits in and you add detail. So anyway, this is the order in which I've kind of done stuff is done things this way. So there's like more stuff that we need to add to this, the founding of other villages and things like that. But mines run dry. The mines of, and again, like a lot of this detail is not necessarily going to be present to the player. You're going to get some amount of this. But one of the things that's really important to me is that I want my lore to feel like it has that root of meaning and significance and some underlying core truth to which everything refers, like Dark Souls does. And I'm not necessarily going to be able to do that as perfectly as I would like because I have limited assets that I'm working with in terms of sprite work and things like that. But I still really want to make sure I'm doing what I can to make the lore have some sort of consistent source of truth about which things work. For the purposes of having a consistent story that I'm telling and having it that way when the player gets a piece of lore, it fills in more details. So y'all are getting spoiled on the lore for this. That's a consequence of watching these videos. But, this is looking at the process of how I'm trying to get this made, so... Anyway, the mines of Telendil run dry, leading to the steady decline of the city. This brings with it a change of focus to salvaging old supplies as much as possible, as well. So basically, they no longer have good iron from their salvaging supplies. This is probably going to get modified because Iron Hill needs to be established at some point before 987. It might actually occur fairly close to this, though. I'll explain in a moment. Lionel and appearance of monuments, 987. The year Lionel was born in Taurus, and the corresponding monuments appeared throughout the region. Naturally, people found them fairly perplexing. So the monuments are going to appear in all of the established villages, like all of the villages that are like actual places where people live at the time that Lionel was born. So there's going to be a bunch of places that do not get monuments. Notably, like here doesn't have a monument. Over here does not have a monument. Over here does not have a monument. And so on and so forth. So there's going to be plenty of places that do not have monuments. I should probably add something for when Lionel joins the Royal Knights, but anyway. 1013, when Lionel is 26, the fall of Telendil. With the loss of the value of the mines, holding Telendil became too expensive to justify to King Toriel. He refused to send knights to defend the city, despite the constant pleas of the people. Its fall is part of what prompted Sir Lionel to found the Adventurers Guild. 4 years later, the founding of the Adventurers Guild, formed by Sir Lionel, who was at this point a royal knight, as a way to better respond to the needs of people throughout the region, as royal bureaucracy had gotten to be overbearing. 1031, betrayal and death of Sir Lionel. Sir Lionel was hunting the legendary King of Monsters. When it was nearly destroyed, his partner betrayed him, striking him down and managing to claim the power of the King of Monsters for herself. Upon her return, she claimed Lionel as a martyr and used him as a prop. She gained control of the Adventurers Guild and began twisting it to her own ends. Taurus renamed Lionelholm. On the 100th anniversary of Sir Lionel's martyrdom, his home city of Taurus was renamed to Lionelholm in his honor. A training school was also founded at this time for new adventurers to help encourage the growth of the guild. And then 3100. We're jumping forward a bit. Getting close to the Astral Collision, 24 years before the Astral Collision, Kazdan builds his hut. Down here. Kazan was an adventurer well known for his skills as a master of elemental magics. However, after witnessing the deaths of multiple teammates, he decided to instead focus on learning the healing arts. He retreats to the woods to the southwest of Kandara in the mountains, where he builds his hut and inadvertently started a way station and healing outpost for adventurers. And then we have the Astral Collision. Kendra is no longer its own. The collision occurs, and many brave adventurers journey across the seas to find their fortune in foreign lands, not realizing how weak and outmatched they really were. Most perish. So that's the overall timeline at the moment. I can bring this up, and you can see everything gets kind of scrunched together because we have a lot of events on top of each other. But, I'm getting stuff fleshed out. And there's a lot of details in there. We'll see how many details I feel I need to add in the end. There can be a lot of rulers during that time, but I've begun filling this out and working in the details, and already it's helping me figure out what's going on in places. So one of the other big things that I have done is Telendil is now a place, specifically Telendil right here. Now, this is a 2,000-year-old ruin-ish, so the walls are cracked, plants are overgrowing, and there's higher-level monsters in here. There's some stuff that's a little bit hand-wavy. You can see, I have outlined where fields were, and there's, these old paths. There's more details here than perhaps should technically survive. The positioning of trees should be a little bit more hectic, but I've positioned stuff with the intent of it implying to the player, this is locations where buildings stood. And I hope that I successfully convey that, particularly in these areas down here. I'm trying to capture that sense of yes, houses stood here and things like that. And then the mine entrances in the middle, there used to be equipment here to raise and lower stuff, but that's all broken down now because it was wood, and this is 2,000 years later, and wooden structures did not survive. The monument's just fine. You can see that I have set up some of the enemy spawns. Enemies can spawn in the red areas, so they will not actually spawn right next to the monument or within this structure. The mine is still very much so a work in progress. I'm going to modify it a bit from even this. This is the vine that you can climb to get in and out. These correspond exactingly to the holes up here where water's fallen through during the rain and accumulated in puddles. These are going to just become pits because the mines continued further down. It went deeper. In fact, let's go ahead and do that right now. I realized that it made sense to have the mines continue on more deeply. So that's going on there. But this is the mines, or at least what I have of the first floor so far. There's probably going to be one more map that may have multiple things going on. I'm not quite sure how I'm going to set that up, but the Telendil mines were a very important mining complex at one point in time, and then ran out of iron, and the city was abandoned, and here we are. So I think that covers a lot of stuff. I don't remember if I did more elsewhere. I set up a bunch of stuff with these monuments. So let's actually talk about one of them. Right here, you see this switch. Updated Mystical Journal notification equals on. So I'm really pleased with this. This is a common event. Mystical Journal updates. It's a parallel event on that switch. It shows an image in the upper left corner, specifically calibrated, and plays a sound effect, and then makes the image fade off, and then turns off the switch. So it turns itself off after it finishes. The image, is this the resource browser? Pop-up thing? Yes, resource manager. So if I go image, pictures, and then I find the notification. Yeah, here it is. I can preview it. It just looks like this. This pops up in the upper right-hand corner of the screen, and fades in really quickly and then slowly fades out with a sound effect. And I'm really, really pleased with it. It shows up in the middle of text boxes and stuff if I want it to. Or in the middle, I can tell it to spawn in the start or end of a text box, and it will pop up. So if I tell it to start at the beginning of a text box, it'll pop up really nicely. I've also added a few skills, just a couple. I haven't tested them out yet or anything, but I added Supernova and Judgment as some spells that you can make use of in the for one of the, specifically the Wrath, Glorious Divine Wrath right here. So this now has all 5 skills. I need to fill out some of the other things, but I had some ideas for those. And I did a simple animation recolor for Supernova. As always, it takes a moment for it to load the sound effects. So this is just a recolor of one of the neutral ones that's normally red, but I made it blue. Hooray. And anyway, I added stuff to make these journal notification pop-ups happen in more places. I think that's the main things I did in this area. Let's see. I guess I can show you how that notification thing looks, though. Save changes to the game. Yes, that seems good. But I really wanted some sort of information about that. I've also added a bunch of information to the journal. Sure, I don't know where you guys are, but that's probably fine. Oh, these guys are way too early. Yeah, we're not gonna do that. I will show you though. The Mystic Journal now has. Okay, the Mystic Journal is apparently broken at the moment. I do not know why it's broken here. Well then, that's an interesting bug. Let's just pick a different. Apparently, there's something broken in it. I'm not entirely sure what. Yeah, these guys were here. Okay, I've broken something with the Mystical Journal. I'll have to investigate what that is. My guess is, yeah, there's some unexpected token stuff. I'll have to figure out that later. I'm surprised it's broken now. It was working earlier. I was testing stuff. Let's see. Okay, you know what? We don't need to sit through this fight. These battles are lengthy. I just want to find a place that I haven't activated the notification so I can show it to y'all. Here's a possibility. Yeah, see, right there. Just flits in. Unobtrusive, but, you know, a little thing to catch your eye and let you know, hey, this thing's there. I have added a bunch of stuff to the Mystical Journal, but given that it's currently not working properly, I can't actually show it to you. It's some sort of parsing error in the JSON at position 525. Yeah, I'm just gonna have to look into that later. I don't want to try to deal with it right now. But I've started adding stuff to it. So let's just look at the Mystical Journal here. It's possible that I just have some blank entries here that are causing problems as well. So I've added some stuff for basic information on damage types. So I talk about physical damage types. Slashing, piercing, striking damage are all considered physical damage types as a result from various forms of physical attacks. As such, it often does poorly against less solid foes such as oozes or spirits. Slashing damage is inflicted by cutting or slicing motions. Like, I basically tell you like what makes those sorts of damages. Simple magic types, I explain like why there's simple magic types and how they're dealt. You can pause if you want to actually read these. Then I talk about complex magical types and why they're called complex. And then what each one is a combination of. And then this is a special note about weaknesses and resistances that it applies to skills that heal you as well as skills that deal damage. Some of these things are not so updated. I've also started adding the divine monuments here. So when you interact with an empowering monument is something that it will give you an additional charge to your resurrection signet. I haven't added it into the game yet, but I wanted to reserve the spot for them there. So what are the divine monuments? This describes the divine monuments and their purpose. Again, you can pause to read it. And then the Forgotten Tomb monument, it unlocks when you interact with the Forgotten Tomb, and it has the poem from the Forgotten Tomb on it if you want to reread it. And that's what's going to happen, as I'm going to add these things in the monuments tab under events for all of the monuments, so that way you can see them. Locations. I don't think I've done anything with this yet. Although I'm going to be adding a bunch of stuff for like visiting towns and villages and stuff to just add more details. Character categories, the teachers. I think this might be something in here is probably what's broken. But we have these don't have any descriptions yet, but I gave them faces. So it's this set of faces. These are the humans. These are the Yidar. These are the Felakor, and these are the Rifa. So if we go back to general lore, these are going to be Farman, Hitsujukai, Isgrifanu, Ledrith, Melamane, Adame, Tamil, and Triotep. So they are going to get entries in here. You're going to get their entries when you interact with... I don't know. I'm guessing there's something wrong in one of these that's causing it to break, and I'm not sure where or what. Because I added these most recently, so it seems likely that something in that's busted. But you're going to get their entries when you interact with these things here. That's when you're going to get their entries in the mystical journal. So that's a lot of what I've been working on. Like I said, I've been kind of slowly working on filling out stuff in the mystical journal. I've added that notification. I've worked on timeline. I've been working on lore and poetry. Like I'm doing some intentional stuff too. Like this follows an ABAB rhyme scheme, whereas the rest of these follow AABB rhyme scheme. So it's like I'm doing some intentional stuff with that. I was really, really happy when I realized sin and kin could rhyme here. There's sin of disharmony. You've forgotten. That's what the sin was. So yeah, like that's the process. I'm going to be adding poetry for every one of these regions. So I'm going to be doing a lot of poetry in this project. Hooray! I like the flair and flavor that it adds to the game, and it gives it a little bit of a distinct edge, I think, potentially. I was thinking of doing a thing where I was trying to figure out damage type conventions, and then I realized I just didn't feel like bothering with that. But there's some ideas that I had here, like metal armor being bad against metal magic. The idea is like, oh, you can manipulate metal. You can just puncture right through their armor. You can turn their armor against them, things like that. Which is just some generic stuff about physical damage. I was thinking of having some descriptions of like, oh, and these types of damage are more effective against these types of enemies, but it's just like, I don't want to bother with trying to figure this out. I'll just let the player deduce it from bestiary entries, I think, in the end. And I've been thinking about additional food that I want to make as well for the game. But I think that covers a lot of the details here. I spent some time earlier in the week focused on working on another program, so I wasn't able to put in as much time on this. And just like I said, working on the lore stuff is a new task in terms of the way that I'm doing it and stuff, and I'm still figuring out the process, so it's a little bit slow going, a little bit rough going, and a little bit more subject to the whims of inspiration. So anyway, I think that's going to go ahead and wrap stuff up for me here. Thank you all for watching, and hopefully next time I'll have the journal working properly for everyone. Until then, everyone, take care, and goodbye.